Hi, this is Dan Bullard, retired electronics engineer, sitting down on the front deck of my houseboat again. I want to tell you a short story from my book, The Reluctant Road Warrior. I'll make it as short as I can, but it was pretty interesting. When I was a Genrad, and this was long before I did mixed signal, when I was a Genrad, I was a trainer, and I ended up doing a lot of work with customers. They would call me up and ask me questions, and like in one case, Northern Telecom in Ottawa, they called me up and they had a question. They didn't understand why it was not working and stuff. And so I asked my boss if it'd be okay for me to fly up there and go work with them and figure out what the problem was. And I flew up there, and my first international flight, boy, did I drink a lot. But it was great. But anyway, so once I got doing that, my boss, he loved it. He loved me doing that. He would loan me out to all these people, and I would go out all over the country and help people with problems on the Genrads. And it got so bad. When I went to work for Credence, and very strangely, Credence asked, they had a survey company go out and do surveys, and they asked, who's your favorite customer service representative? I was a trainer, right? They picked me. I was chosen. And believe it or not, the guy in charge of doing the survey was my old boss from Genrad. And he said, is that the same Dan Bullard that used to work for Genrad? And they're like, yeah. And he's like, oh my God, no wonder. So everybody, all the customers at Credence considered me their best field applications or field maintenance engineer. And even though I was just a trainer. But during that time when I was at Genrad, Tony, my boss Tony, not that Tony, the other Tony, my boss Tony he was great. He sent me all over the country for all kinds of stuff. And there was a customer in Hauppauge, New York. I think it was called Standard Microsystems at the time. I think they've changed their name, but they made things like TV tuners that would go on a PC or on a Mac, so you could watch TV on your Mac or on your PC. They still make that kind of thing, but they did a lot of different devices. But they had a problem, and I had taught a class at Standard Microsystems in Hauppauge, New York, so I knew how to get there. I knew the whole thing. So I flew out there with another guy that I knew, a guy named Horst, who was a great guy, German guy, and another guy, Mike McDermott, I think, and he worked in New York. He was not on Long Island, he was somewhere in New York. And so the three of us were sent there because Hauppauge was having this problem with their Genrad. They had two Genrad GR16s, and they were basically across the aisle from each other. One worked flawlessly. The other one would occasionally just lose its mind and shut down, and they couldn't do anything with it. So they had two testers. One worked perfectly, the other one was giving them all kinds of grief. So me and Horst and Mike McDermott went out there, and we were told, you get to go home when you get it fixed. And so we worked like dogs. We went out there and we worked all week, 1 week, and we couldn't make any progress. We'd work on it all day long, and by the end of the day, what was happening was the computer was rebooting in the middle of the test. And you could run diagnostics or run a test program, and it would start rebooting all by itself. But no matter what we did, we'd make changes and do things, and eventually at the end of the day, it would quit. And we thought, oh, we'd solved the problem. So, but then the next day we'd show up at work, and son of a bitch, it would still be broken. It would still like reset the computer would reboot. We changed out the hard drive, we changed out the memory, we changed out the computer, we changed out the PDU, the big transformer in the back of the thing. We changed out everything we could. I mean, they were shipping us stuff left and right. and working. I mean, we worked 16 hours a day, so and they asked us to work through the weekend too. So we worked on Saturday and Sunday, and we thought we had it wrapped up Saturday and Sunday, but then on Monday, son of a bitch, it was back again, and we couldn't get it to go away. So we worked, and again, we'd work on it all day long, and we couldn't. We thought we would solve it. We'd leave for the night. Everything was working fine. We'd show up the next day, and it would have restarted the computer. The computer had not blown up, but it had reset and rebooted, and we were just going crazy. We did this for 3 weeks. Now, we changed everything. We swapped out virtually every board in the system. This is a big system. This is like, I think it was 4 or 5 bays, 4 19-inch bays, big tester, big tester. And again, the one across the hall was working fine, so it couldn't be that. And we weren't going to steal parts from that one because that would be bad. So we decided to go, try out the fans, it could be the fans, who knows, So on the top of the Genrad, there was a metal cage that you could take off and you could get to the fans. And they were just the muffin fans, normal, whatever, 115 volt muffin fans. So we changed out the fans, or went to change out the fans, and wouldn't you know, while the cover was off and we were working on the fans, it wasn't restarting the computer. But we'd seen that before. We'd seen that kind of behavior before. So we changed out the fans and let it sit there for a while, and it would restart the computer. But then I'm like, well, wait a minute. When we had the cover off of the fans, it didn't restart. So let's take the cover off again. So we took the cover off, and like, how could it be the cover? It's just a steel cover sitting on top of the fans to keep things from debris from falling into the fans, right? Took the cover off, set it on the side, left it alone, wouldn't restart. Okay, we've seen this before. So we said, okay, let's wrap it up for the night. Let's go to our hotels, go back to the hotel, get some sleep. The next day we show up, the computer hadn't restarted. It hadn't rebooted. It ran the whole night without rebooting. This is during the week, so that had never happened before. So we let it run for the rest of the day, couldn't get it to restart. So I talked to the manager, the maintenance manager at the Hop Hog facility, and I says, hey, there's this thing hanging from the ceiling just above the tester. What is that? The one across the hall didn't have that. So what is that thing hanging down there? He says, oh, that's an ionizer probe. That is a probe that is used, there's a sensor that senses the overall static charge on the floor. And so if the static charge gets too high on the test floor, it zaps the air. And it rains down ions, and it zaps the air so that the static charge goes away. And I said, can I just remove that probe? And he says, well, that's not it. I said, well, is it okay if I take it off and just try it? And he says, yeah, sure. So I says, okay, fine. So I took the probe off and I put the cover back on. Nothing happened. The computer didn't restart. We left it overnight. Computer didn't restart. It was still the week. Didn't restart. We sat there all day long watching for it. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. So that was it. Taking the probe off of there was it. But that's not the end of the story. So we went a couple of days and we couldn't get it to restart. So the tester we basically declared the tester up, and they could go back to using the tester for testing their chips that they made at this facility for putting TV on PCs and Macs and stuff like that. So I got to say goodbye to Horace and Mike, and I really like Horace. He's a great guy. So I went home. Tony said I could. I went home, got to see my wife after 3 fucking weeks of being gone. So then a couple weeks later, we got a call from Mike McDermott. We did a conference call with Horace and Mike McDermott. He called us up and told us what had happened. Unbelievable. They had a policy at Standard Microsystems in Hauppauge. They had a policy. Women were not allowed to wear pantyhose because pantyhose underneath the anti-static skirt or smocks that people wore, pantyhose would create static electricity, and that would make the system discharge ions, and that was bad. They knew that was a problem. So they outlawed it. So no woman was supposed to be wearing nylons. But some chick on the day shift was wearing nylons to work, an operator. And so when that operator was there on site, that was creating a static charge that the zapper thing would flood ions onto the test floor right on top of that genrad and zap the computer. It would create enough enough static charge through the hardware to zap the computer and make it restart. They'd found out that this gal was wearing the nylon, so they made her take them off, and they didn't have any more trouble. That was it. She was wearing nylon. She wasn't allowed to, but she did. So it was a woman wearing nylons that fucking put us out of there for 3 weeks. We were out there for 3 weeks, killing ourselves, working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 fucking weeks. That's the kind of stuff that I dealt with all the time. You know, the maintenance manager there is telling me, oh no, that can't be that system. The salesman told us it wouldn't do that. Oh yeah? Well, guess what? It did do that. So all that hardware that we swapped out, all that work that we did, the hotel bills and the meals and the travel out there, the airline tickets, the whole shebang, all of that was their fault. It was their fault. So that's the kind of stuff I see. And these people, again, they all have degrees, you know, they're very highly skilled, but they didn't know a goddamn thing. Not a goddamn thing. It took me taking that fan cover, setting it down, and that was what did it. So I solved the problem. So anyway, that's kind of a fun story. I hope you have something like that. So once again, from the river, this is Dan Bullard. See ya.